all here today. And we will be taking a look at the a state of play of the infrastructure and policy to power up. So just before I hand over to my colleague Gianluca, just to take you through the agenda for today and a couple of housekeeping points. So we have two parts to today's webinar. The first is a live demo of Ember's new and improved interconnection data tool. So my colleague Gianluca will be taking us through all of the different indicators and data points that you can explore through this interactive tool. And we will allow some time after that for Q&A on the tool itself. So we invite you to use the Q&A box that you can find below in Zoom. And please, if possible, write your name when you write the question, because in case we do not have time to reply to everyone, we can do so afterwards if we have your details. The second part will be a panel discussion on the European Grids policy package. We think it's a fantastic moment to be talking about this as it's open for public consultation at this moment. And we are joined today by 4 excellent panelists who will give an opening statement, and then we will move on to a panel debate and questions from audience again. So I think that's pretty much it. One final point before I pass the floor to Jean is to let you all know that today's webinar is being recorded. It will be published on YouTube, and the link to the recording will be available on the Ember event page. Thank you, and Jean, over to you.
Thanks, Lizzie. Well, welcome everyone, and thanks for being here. I'm Gianluca Geneletti, and I'm a grids and flexibility analyst here at Ember. We, as some of you may know, launched recently an Europe electricity interconnection data tool with the aim to showcase and make more accessible data on cross-border transmission capacities in the pan-European region, but also flows across it, not only for the most recent historical time, but also for future, as in forecast years. And I'll be very quickly giving you a demonstration of how the data tool looks like and works. I'll switch for a second onto Ember's website to show you how the data tool actually looks like. But before I get into the dashboard itself, I would like to remind you that the data set used in this tool is freely available on Ember's website. And on the same page, you can find also some explanations on how to use the data tool itself, but also some more in detail methodology on how the data set behind the data tool was created. And on top of that, if you find any inaccuracies in the data, or you would like to flag any inconsistency that you think is relevant for the quality of the data tool itself, there is just a feedback form here at the end of the page that you can fill in. This being said, I'll guide you very quickly through the data tool. What you can see here is the landing page, and you can navigate the data tool through 2 different set of parameters. One is the year, so you can look at 2024, 2030, and 2040 on the map. What you see in the capacity view is very intuitively by the width of the lines that are drawn on there, the cross-border transmission capacity divided in 3 categories. So what you see here are reference, projects, and needs. Reference relates to the best estimate capacity, which is the same one that you can find in 2024. Projects is the capacity, including all projects that are expected to come online by the year you selected. And needs is the economically viable capacity that would minimize system costs for the pan-European scope. That is the gaps that needs to be filled also by projects to come to the most efficient version of our power system. What you see in the country nodes as shades indicates the import potential of each country relative to their peak demand, meaning that for uh, countries in darker shades, the interconnection capacity can on import theoretically fulfill more of the peak power demand of the country, while for countries in lighter shades, the peak demand is such that, and the interconnection capacity on import is such that potentially the country can't satisfy as much of their demand through imports. At the same time, for the 3 years, you have also available a flows view, and I'm staying on the maps here just to show better what the maps highlight, and then I'll get into more details. The flows view as well available for 2030, and 2040 highlights both the flows of electricity through the pan-European scope and the net positions of countries. Very briefly, on if you see an arrow without any yellow background, that means that that interconnector is being used either in one direction or the other on a very saturated level, meaning that the interconnection is being used a lot and is useful to the efficiency of the power system. Of course, the width, of course, indicates the magnitude of the flows, and the shade of the color green for the arrows is to indicate how directional, on average, the flow is. So, for example, if you look here at Spain to France in 2040, you see a very wide arrow, meaning that the flow is quite big, at least relative to the rest of the power system, and a very dark arrow, meaning that in 2040, Spain is expected, according to the models behind this data, to mostly export towards France and not the other way around. The colors on the country nodes in this case indicate whether a country is a net exporter, such as in the case of Spain in this case, or a net importer, such as in the case of Malta, for example. There's more to this, meaning that if I quickly go back to the capacity view, you can click on any of the country nodes and see more of the information on their interconnectors. You see here how the capacity develops from Spain to France, Portugal, Italy, and Morocco over time in 2040, starting from the darkest shade in 2024, and then getting to the best estimate for 2040. And on top of that, the projects that might come online and the gap to make the system more efficient. You see, for example, that the Italian, the connection from Spain to Italy is only in a lighter shade because there's a project there that could come online by 2040. And you see also figures on import potential, always relative to peak demand for the selected year with the different types of interconnection infrastructure. The same type of in-depth analysis can be done for the flows view. I'll stay on Spain just because it's a relatively easier geography to display. And you see, sorry, my connection is okay. And you see in this case, two types of indicators and two types of patterns. The RES-E indicator just gives you an overview of the percentage of wind and solar in the total generation mix. Here we're looking at 2040, and there's also the same information reported for 2024 for comparison in the background. And then you have the net P, what you see here indicated as the net P indicator, which would be the net exports. So if this indicator is positive, and it is expressed as a percentage of the country demand, then the country is being a net exporter for the moment that is indicated. You can visualize these two indicators both as a hour of day average and as a monthly average, which gives you an idea of how the profiles during a day on average and during a year seasonally would change. And for the same two patterns, you can also find the composition of the flows going out of the country. In this case, for example, if we look at the monthly view for flows indicators, you see that most of the interconnection capacity for Spain is used to export to France and secondly to Morocco, while for 2040 again normally Spain tends to import from Portugal with some slight seasonal pattern. I tried to condense a lot of information in this overview. I hope it was more or less clear. Please feel free to present any other questions, and I'll be more than happy to answer them. Going back to the presentation.
Fantastic, John. Thanks so much. So yes, as he said, we invite you all to add your questions to the Q&A box. And we already have a question, John, for you. So I think perhaps you can also provide a bit of detail on the source data for these figures, because the question is about whether the models take into account potentially large increases in battery installations by 2040. So this obviously relates to the source data.
It's great that you asked this. Thanks, Robin. And that's because we have here with us also Patricia, which is a convener of which was the convener of T1DP for the past edition, which was the base of many of the data that we used for this data tool, and in the T1DP exercise for the scenario that we used, at least we used the national trend scenario, which is supposed to be the central one and the one that reflects the trajectories also in battery capacity according to NACPs and national policies at the moment. I hope this answers your questions, but I would also invite you to check out the methodology behind the T1DP study itself, because way more thorough and detailed on this.
Okay, we also have a question from Christy from ENTSO-E, who's joining us today. So she wants to understand the origin and transformation of the data. So probably apart from our data sources, the validation processes that we did, and in particular as well, who you think would find most use from the data tool in their work.
Yes. So, well, as I was mentioning, the data comes mostly from ENTSO-E, but also from other complementary sources such as TSOs that we consulted individually, other organizations such as the Baltic Offshore Grids Initiative or the Mediterranean TSO organization. Plus, of course, a lot of desk research to benchmark all the information that we collected. in case, to give you an example of the benchmark we made for the interconnection capacities, we looked at both sources for interconnection capacity itself directly, of course, but also coupled them with hourly information on flows that we took also from ENTSO-E's transparency platform, or for forecasted year for the T1DP scenarios national trends model, and that helped us ensure a consistency between what we're showcasing in terms of flows and what we're showcasing in terms of capacity. This tool can be useful to highlight gaps in investments for interconnections, and to also highlight how the projects that are existing that are under consideration or development today, especially as PCI projects of common interest that were candidates for the T1DP, are addressing these gaps. So it can be useful both for decision makers, especially when, and I wink here looking at the grids package, or also for other analysts for other organizations that look for a comprehensive data set to look into interconnections in Europe, and potentially also to model it. We consider the data sources we used the highest possible in quality, so we would recommend checking it out. Hope it answers your question.
Thanks, Sean. That's great. So I think we have time for about one more question, which is maybe less related to the tool, but obviously is relevant to it. So it's about applying dynamic line rating to critical grid elements. And given that this would increase capacity on the lines and reduce congestion, the question is about what we think of this, and also if we can use the tool to test this. So I don't know, Jean, if you want to go into a bit more detail about the tool and how it relates to modeling.
Yeah, I mean, of course, dynamic line rating is one of the most powerful, either in modeling or in operations, TSO's tools for among the grid enhancement technologies. I'm afraid such a detailed and technical representation of it is not possible in the data tool, because the data tool we presented mostly shows interconnection capacities as net transfer capacities. So it's a best estimate of the potential of a line to transfer electricity, according also to potential outages during a year. But as it's mentioned in the methodology, which I also invite you to read at this point, some of the flows might be some of the actual interconnection capacities might be conservative in this case, both because the T1DP uses this type of convention, so the net transfer capacity, and because, as you mentioned, both in the core region and in the Nordics, capacity for cross-border transfer is calculated through a flow-based decoupling algorithm. So to answer to the question, unfortunately not, but I agree that would be very interesting to look into.
Definitely. Thanks so much, Jan. So I think now we can move actually on time to the panel discussion. And we have 4 fantastic panelists joining us at this point. So we have Andrzej from RGI, which is a unique collaboration of TSOs and NGOs in Europe. We have Christian from Supergrid Europe, which is a new think tank established, I think, in the last couple of weeks, dedicated to accelerating the planning and delivery of a pan-European electricity grid that is fit for purpose. We have Patricia from ENTSO-E, She is the chair of the System Development Committee, which is in charge of TSO cooperation regarding network development and planning. And then finally, we have Max, who is joining us from Elia Group, where he's a senior EU affairs advisor. So to get started, for their opening statements, our panelists were asked specifically what they consider to be the biggest obstacle for cross-border capacity in Europe at the moment, and very importantly, what they think the EU Grids policy package can do to actually address that. So we're going to start with Andrzej from RGI, and Andrzej, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lizzie, and also thank you very much for the invitation to join this webinar. As mentioned, I represent Renewables Grid Initiative, trying to bring together voices of grid operators as well as NGOs, and this is important to mention because that relates to the answer to the question that you stated. And also approaching this question from the perspective of the misconceptions which we quite often face when it comes to the discussions on electricity grids, is starting from the point that quite often and still electricity grids are being perceived or framed as a barrier to progress with the energy transition and integration of renewables, whereas it is the other way around. Actually, the electricity grids are the enabler of integrating renewables into the system and to progress with the energy transition. And secondly, while it sounds as a very technical endeavor to develop the electricity grid, in fact, it's not only technical because while developing this infrastructure, also nature and people, the environmental and societal considerations, they need to be taken into account. Electricity grid is not being developed in a vacuum. Wherever we build and develop the infrastructure, it will bring some effects on the environment that we are building in. And taking this as a background and moving to the discussion how the grids package can address it. Here I wanted to focus specifically on one topic related to permitting that the grids package is trying to address, trying to provide streamlined permitting. This is important also because the data shows, and also the data presented in Acer's report on electricity infrastructure published at the end of last year, shows that one of the main reasons of the most delayed PCI projects lies in delayed permitting, as reported by the project promoters. And while accelerating permitting and also streamlining environmental assessment is important to avoid the delays, it should be carried out in a way that it's aligned with high environmental standards. So we should not only accelerate while forgetting about biodiversity, about nature, but also in a way that allows for enhanced and meaningful stakeholder engagement. So how does it overlap with the grids package, and also looking from the planning perspective? The grid and the system should be planned in a way that aligns with biodiversity targets set internationally, but also at the European level. That should be done in alignment with nature restoration plans that are going to be prepared by the member states, with very simple activities while avoiding nature sensitive areas, developing sensitivity mappings, or investigating cost eligible mitigation measures. Otherwise, the development of the grids can be backlashed if it doesn't go hand in hand with environmental considerations. And linked to that, I think that the grids package should also take or seek for synergies with the frameworks that are already developed in relation to stakeholder engagement. For example, the 10E regulation already talks about transparency and public participation, referring to existing files. So this is something that should be kept. Also seeking for synergies with existing frameworks, as for example, Grid's action plan and the Pact for Engagement, that also refers very specifically to the points of awareness raising to address these misconceptions, but also in terms of better permitting and planning. And I think I will stop here because I think I exceeded the time for my intervention. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Yes, so panelists were keeping to 3 minutes, but I think, Andrzej, you were just about there, so no problem. And a point to the audience before we move on, feel free at any point to be writing your questions in the Q&A box to prepare for the panel discussion that will come after the opening statements. So next we're moving to Christian, and please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Elisabeth. And thank you also for convening this important meeting and for your tool. The products coming out of Ember are really, truly helpful to have a common reference point for debating these very important things. In terms of the biggest obstacle, there are many. We need to create incentives. We need to deal with the supply chain of building infrastructure and cables. We need to apply innovation. We have lots of innovation that can be applied tomorrow. We're not good at creating the right incentives for it. And mostly we need institutional and governance reform and come up with a plan that can actually deliver a grid that's fit for purpose. The heads of states have called for a genuine energy union. And last year, the energy ministers agreed unanimously that we should have a fully integrated, interconnected, and synchronized European power system. And they also said that this can only be achieved if the electricity grid infrastructure is deployed and used as effectively and efficiently as possible. And I think this is a guiding principle for the grids package coming out. And a few weeks ago, the European Parliament, the co-legislator to the Council, followed up by saying we will only reach decarbonization if there's a coordinated pan-European approach to electricity system planning, connecting borders, sectors, and regions. And I think this is something, if there are two documents that the Commission should read again before putting forward proposals, is the initiative report on grids from the Parliament and the Council conclusions from 30th of May last year from the energy ministers. Interconnection is saving us 34 billion euros per year. And I absolutely agree with Andrzej. The grids are enablers, and the faster we can build them, the bigger the benefits also in terms of lower cost, reduced and increased efficiency. We have about 10 to 15 years to get carbon out of our electricity grids. We must decarbonize our electricity by in the second half of the 30s if we are to have a truly decarbonized economy by 2050. And 10 to 15 years is a very short time. It's just the time of planning and building a single interconnector. So we're really, really in a hurry. And I think that sense of urgency must be reflected also in the Commission proposals when they come out. It's a mega project to build the European grid for purpose. It must be modular, but it requires a plan. And that again requires that we change the governance structure we have and also the institutional structures we have. But I do think that the Commission is in a good place to come up with something that can truly accelerate it. It only has this term to do it. What I would do if I were them was to dig out some of the thinking, for instance, that they proposed in a staff working paper prior to last time they put forward proposals, namely in 2020 before the 10E regulation reform. They came up with some thinking on independent system operators. They should also look to the structures of FERC in the United States, ENTSO in the UK, and maybe also be inspired by the Midwestern independent system operator that's formed also in the United States. These are models for having that greater integrated pan-European planning. I would also ask them to call Professor Flubier and Dan Gardner. They wrote a book called How Big Things Get Done. And more importantly, they also have a very big database on how most large projects become over budget over time, over and over again. So they can also pinpoint to what all these failures are, but it starts with a plan that is pan-European. And the Commission does, and it should use the very strong and real support it has for institutional and governance reform and acceleration that it has from its two co-legislators. And that's something that they weren't left with last time they put forward proposals on the CENI. So use the strong signals from the co-legislators, the Council and the European Parliament. We need an energy union, and it must be based on the free movement of electricity throughout Europe. Thank you.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much. So a lot of food for thought already. So please keep your questions coming. And we move to our third speaker, Patricia.
Thank you very much for the invitation, Elisabeth. First, I would like to start saying that the European Grids package is timely and much needed step to ensure our electricity infrastructure keeping up with the Europe's goal related to climate, to industry, and to energy security. At ENTSO-E, we welcome this revision. We see that the grid is not just a technical asset, it's the backbone of the internal energy market. And as has been already said, a strategic enabler of everything from decarbonization to competitiveness, which is important now in Europe too, and without forgetting the security, which relevance is currently also increasing with the last events that we have seen, and with new dimensions also related to physical and to cyber security. So in our experience, the biggest barrier to expanding cross-border capacity is not the analysis and the ambition, it's the slow and fragmented implementation of what we already know we need to do. We have seen the results of the TYNDP studies there, in the previous presentation from Jan. So faster progress is within reach if we can streamline permitting, align regulations, and close the gaps there. So our 10-year network development plan, the TYNDP that I guess that you all know, shows that we need 108 additional gigas of cross-border capacity in 2040, and that currently there are not enough infrastructure projects to address these needs. Don't forget that ENTSO-E itself don't propose the project, but makes a call for project promoters to solve the identified needs, and there all possibilities are all innovation and all type of assets or can be proposed. And another key fact is that half of the infrastructure projects of the TYNDP project portfolio submitted by the project promoters and needed to be in place in 2030 are currently still in permitting phase, half of them speak. So the grid package could have the tools to fix this, especially by streamlining permitting, by enforcing deadlines, and improving EU-wide coordination at regional level, involving all relevant actors, from member states to all affected stakeholders, as Andrzej has already said too. And while the last year's new generation and regeneration was the main driver for the grid development, now the demand and electrification is gaining momentum. However, we often hear a persistent misconception, and that grids can be adapted later in the energy transition once the demand materializes. But that's not just how it works. Building the grid takes time. In some cases, difficult projects takes more than a decade. And if we want electrification, if we want renewables and clean industry to take off, we need to build in advance. So the grid packets can help shift this mindset and put in anticipatory investments at the heart of the EU energy and industrial policy. And here, our TYNDP estimates that over 800 billion euro in investment are needed by 2050, not counting internal national grids. That's significant, right? But our studies show also that it's worth it. Every euro investment would return over €2 in value to the European society. That's thanks to reduced curtailment, risk curtailment, the stronger resilience and economic growth. So to summary, well, to deliver, we think that the new package should focus on 4 things: planning that should be aligned and forward-looking, permitting that should be faster and more predictable, also investment frameworks that should be stable, flexible, and the risk, and stronger supply chains that was already mentioned. That's all from my side.
Thanks, Patricia. Much food for thought, and very interesting point on people not realizing that the grid actually does have to come first, because we don't have enough time to build once the situation materializes. So definitely a chicken versus egg situation that for once has been solved. For our final panelist, we move to Max, and please, the floor is yours, Maximilian.
Thanks a lot, Lizzie. Thanks a lot for having us also. Very happy to speak today on behalf of Elia Group, a group of TSOs consisting of Elia Transmission Belgium and 50 Hertz, one of the 4 German TSOs in the northeast of Germany. I would like to start my intervention with 2 observations and 2 hypotheses. So first on the observations, I think, and that is just as Christian had said it as well, all relevant actors agree on the need for more cross-border infrastructure. The EP in its most recent reports, governments in their 2024 council conclusions, Acer, system operators all agree, and I think that's a very good sign. Second, prices in the supply chain actually have risen quite substantially, making some projects twice as expensive than they have just been really a few years ago. And this has an impact on a number of issues that we see today, including on the sharing of costs of cross-border infrastructure. Also deriving on that, I'd have 2 hypotheses. Number 1, there is no way around the buy-in from member states if we want to talk project implementation. Because unless we get a huge amount of money from the EU budget, which would probably need to be based on joint debt, it is the member states who eventually need to pay for the infrastructure. Second, what is the right geographical scope to discuss joint projects? I think we agree uni or bilateral level is clearly too little, while the whole EU level, from our point of view, is too broad. Doing joint work at regional level, both among system operators and government, for us is the right approach. Why? Because it's mostly at that level that shared benefits and also interests occur. So what does all of that mean for the grid package? At least I would say 3 things. First, we should strengthen the regional collaboration of system operators to find joint solutions for infrastructure needs, such as also discussed today. We have a very good example for that, how such collaboration can work in the North Sea, where a new group, the Offshore TSO Collaboration, has just conducted a joint market analysis and has already published some interesting findings. Second recommendation, member states need to be closely aligned in the entire project development process. And this means both governments and regulators, as they both play a vital role when endorsing projects eventually in one way or another. It's key to get their buy-in, because if presented with results only and receiving a bill of a couple of billion euros eventually, they will not buy in. Third recommendation, let's also discuss the benefit. There's a promising concept developed in the North Sea context as well, namely the establishment of an offshore financing facility, which shall pool various types of funding and financing measures, and also include guarantees, rest shares, to eventually derive more attractive and also more bankable projects. Again, something worth to be further investigated in the grid package context from our point of view. So thanks a lot for the attention and very much looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you so much. Again, lots of food for thought, so it's difficult to think how to actually kick off this panel discussion. And I think we have already some questions from the audience. So what I will do is just pose the question to one particular speaker, but I invite all of you to join in as well. So the first one has to do with planning. So planning does seem to be a big part of this upcoming grids policy package. There's a lot of discussion about what that should look like in the future. And we have Andres Graf ask specifically to you, Christian, if the examples in the US about independent system operators, could you flesh out a bit more about these examples and what you think we could learn from this in this regard? He continues that his impression is that inter-regional and even intra-regional transmission planning is actually far behind that compared to the EU.
Yes and no. I think to take it back a step, there is a need to move from a bottom-up to a top-down approach. What Maximilian was describing, the need to have at a regional level, absolutely. And it's really nice to see that groups of TSOs are now coming together, recognizing that this is no longer a bilateral or point-to-point discussion. This is something that has benefits and costs beyond the two ends where the connection meets. And it's great to see. I still believe we need a top-down approach. Regional cooperation will save consumers a lot of money. But in terms of planning a decarbonized energy system, which will to a large extent be based on very large amounts of solar and wind in two different areas of Europe, which are almost perfectly uncorrelated and therefore needs interconnection. EU level planning, in my mind, is not even enough. We need pan-European level. And as the European Parliament points out in its initiative report, we need to include the UK and Norway in this. And I know UK TSOs are also involved in some of those corporations, Max. But I do believe that we need a top-down approach to an EU-wide plan in order to get its enormous project built in time. And I very much agree with what Patricia says on the need for anticipatory investment. The Commission just came out a report on that, which is very, very welcome. We do need to build the grids before the demand actually comes out. And in my mind, those ideas of having different governance structures is absolutely necessary. And I don't necessarily mean we should mirror the others, but there is a need for TSOs to hand over some decision-making powers to an overstately body in order to get this done in time.
Thanks, Christian. Interesting point on TSOs handing over some of their planning. Patricia, would you like to add on this and anything else?
Yeah, just to complement, because as ENTSO-E, we also have discussions with US entities, and they usually see the pan-European planning as a really good exercise that it's difficult to do it there in the United States. So this possibility of collaboration and analysis at pan-European level is somehow unique in the world, and they also see that that the possibilities of being like TSOs allows in many aspects efficiency and synergies that from their side they cannot be implemented. So that's related to the conversations that we have with some entities on the other part of the ocean.
Thank you. And just to press you a bit on the independent system operator idea, do you have any particular points to add on that? Or should we skip to the next part?
So that was to me.
Yes.
Okay. No. So I think that there are a lot of synergies that, as I mentioned, and what the American entities also mentioned, yeah, that there are a lot of synergies that can be implemented in that type of framework, in a framework of TSO that possibly in the case of independent system operator couldn't be similar. So I think that's and also efficiency aspects. It can be taken place there.
Thank you so much. And Andrzej, would you like to add?
Yes, thank you. I wanted to refer to this point about planning and also looking from the perspective of regional planning, which I also support, but with one point. Making sure that that within already existing processes, any other planning exercises at the regional level, not only at the bilateral stage, should be complementary to the one that is being done at the European level, and not competing, not providing only alternatives in a sense to assess what is better, what is worse. It's rather to provide alternatives in a sense to better understand what are the potential pathways of development and what are the complementaries between those. Because I think that one of the challenges already met within so many different policy implementations that are relevant also for the pan-European system planning is alignment between the timelines and achievement of the targets. So that's also one point, to harmonize and streamline those in the context of the planning, but also making sure that those planning and modeling done at the regional level are very much complementary and not competing. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's a great point on harmonization, because we do have a lot of very interlinked processes that tend to happen slightly separately. Max, over to you.
Yeah, thanks a lot. And I would like to directly react to that, because just to say, Andrzej, I couldn't agree more with what you just said. And just to share that the approach we took now in the North Sea, which really for us was a first in itself, so to say, that we brought a total of 11 system operators, including also, by the way, from the UK and Norway, around the table conducting this joint analysis. It was a pilot, but it was very well received. Also, it was a good exercise for us as well, that I can share. But the intention is indeed to also fill a missing gap, actually, or a missing link in today's planning framework. So, because what do we have? We have the identification of system needs, the formal one, as it's being done today within the TIWA NDP. Then we have project promoters submitting projects, but which are then eventually assessed in the CBA of the TIWA NDP, and having for this project submission already a regional look at what infrastructure could be indeed a good set from a regional point of view, I think is, from our perspective, something that is actually missing today, and where we hope to bring really an added value also through this joint infrastructure development and finding joint solutions, because that's in essence what we're talking about, finding joint solutions for gaps. And to broaden the scope, maybe also of the perspective from the North Sea to other areas, I think we have at least 4 priority corridors also identified at European level. Maybe this can also serve as a blueprint. I think next to the North Sea, we have the Baltic Sea region, we have the Iberian Peninsula, and then we have Southeast Europe, where I think there's also quite some regional collaboration actually ongoing. But this could also be a way forward to focus on such areas and strengthen the regional approach from that end.
We definitely have a lot of best practices, I think, coming out. And just to add to that, Maximilian, I have a question on the grids policy package. Do you think that within that there should be some designation of an actor who will play that role of a regional facilitator? Or do you think that it is more something that needs to happen ad hoc at TSO level?
I think, I mean, I could have an easy answer now and say it's a political decision also, and eventually we are happy to implement what the policy level tells us. But to be a bit more constructive, I think we actually have relevant fora already today. So we have the high-level groups informally set up, such as the ENTSO-E or BMAP, where already governments discuss, occasionally also, well, the Commission is also there, occasionally regulators also attend such meetings. So that is one forum where you could actually discuss such joint infrastructure solutions. If that is not the right forum, we have also the regional groups within the 10E framework around the PCIs, which could be, again, we have governments around the table, we have regulators around the table, where you could also strengthen these groups to have a more thorough joint consideration of regional infrastructure solutions. So I would not say that per se we need to form new bodies, considering also, I think the focus should really be on implementation now and project delivery. So empowering existing structures seems to be at the moment a bit more reasonable. And just on the system operator side, what could be done is, one way could be also, we have also regional plans actually, not under the 10E regulation, but under the electricity regulation. And maybe there's also a way to strengthen these through linking them closer to, for example, the identification of system needs and have a more thorough assessment. Okay, what needs are matched, where is remaining gaps, and use that also more as a strategic tool in the future.
I think that brings us nicely to a next point. So in fact, apologies, Christian, I see you have your hand up, but I think we better move on to one additional point for today's discussion, as we've discussed a lot about planning and institutional setup. So the next one is about a barrier that was discussed by two panelists today, permitting specifically. And we have two different questions. So one, if it is an issue with member states having different permitting process. So bilaterally, this may pose a bit of a difficulty when you are working with two countries that have different processes. And the second is a question about whether there are other issues than permitting that play a role here. In particular, a degree of skepticism of economic or reliability benefits of interconnection projects, and whether this skepticism also leads to delays. So on these 2 points, maybe we can start with Patricia, move to Andrzej, and then, of course, other panelists, feel free to raise your hand.
Okay, thanks, Elisabeth. So regarding permitting, so there are some voices mentioning 29th regulatory regime, because what is true is that we have a very different permitting process around Europe, and it's true that sometimes it's because there are different specificities in all the countries that we have there. What we see is that we should try to foster speed there with simplification, probably avoiding different type of rules at different laws applying to the same project that extend the process of the permitting. Also, some one-stop shops example that we have for some PCI projects, and it works well in some countries, not as well in others, but also they could be expanded to other type of projects too, in order to foster the permitting. And something that is also really useful, it's try to engage as soon as possible all the affected the stakeholders in the definition of the project at the planning process, and in the definition on the right of way when it comes to the reality, to the implementation, and that can help a lot and speed the acceptance of the projects there. And the other question, sorry, I was related to other aspects.
Yes, whether there's a degree of skepticism about the actual benefits of these projects, and that may actually cause delays in moving ahead with them.
Okay, yeah. So, well, in that sense, at least at European level, the assessment of the projects, it's based on official data always. It's always based on the NCPs that are the clear objective of member states on how they look their countries. That's the basis. So that has a kind of stamp of credibility, and that member states will make through the measures to try to go in that direction. And the methodology itself, it's widely spread, widely discussed, also approved by the European Commission. So I think that the exercise is quite robust. And the point is that for sure, we probably have to improve a little bit on the communication of the need for these projects, on the reasoning on why they are needed. Probably the wider benefits are at European level, and that sometimes makes some conflicts with the people that is affected by the projects themselves, and we have these NIMBY effects, or sometimes banana even. But I think that in that sense, explanation, justification, transparency is key, and it's relevant to engage everyone and try to row all in the same direction.
Thank you very much. I had not actually heard the term banana, so I will be looking that up after this webinar. Andrzej.
Yes, thank you. I fully agree with what Patricia said, but also referring very specifically to this question, I think that there should also be a distinction between the projects that are being in the process of getting the PCI status, and also going through the scrutiny and the cost-benefit analysis that takes still different indicators into account, and at the end should deliver benefits into the system, in comparison to the projects taking place, let's say, only in the national settings, when the national regulators has the final words, and the perceptions that are being expressed by the local actors or by the communities, where indeed the infrastructure, the investments is really taking place. Because then in this specific cases, perhaps even providing information about monetized benefits that are being delivered by a specific project at the system level would probably will not be convincing, considering that the infrastructure is being built in a close vicinity. And I will close here, because I see Max and Christian.
Thank you. And we have 2 minutes left, so we can first go to Maximilian and then Christian. If you can keep it to about 1 minute, that will make us perfectly on time. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot. No, I just wanted to share that I would agree that I think needs to be a distinction made between, okay, the actual permitting duration, which is actually not, it can be caused by local opposition, of course, but effectively what we need to do is we need to prepare a lot of studies, documents. There's lots of administrative effort, which is rightfully done so, of course, but we just must be aware that this is basically the lion's share of what takes time in permitting. It is conducting lengthy studies, which is something where we also see room for streamlining the rules still, while not compromising on the nature conservation ambition. So this, I think, needs to be detached from a general, I would not necessarily call it NIMBY, because if there is a perception, okay, there is no needs for a certain project, that's a different discussion than lengthy permitting process as well, where in the past, at least that's what we had seen in Germany, it can also be quite an opportunistic discussion led by the political side, actually, challenging the needs for a certain project. Fortunately, we have moved beyond that, but there's also, I would say, a political responsibility also for backing such projects eventually.
Interesting point, actually. I'm very clear on the permitting. Christian, you have the last word for today.
Thanks. I'd like to come back to to what one of the people asked about before with DLR, because I think that's a big option for us in the short space we have. DLR, advanced monitoring, storage, batteries, all kinds of flexibility and advanced conductors. There are technologies that are available today that can be applied, and Current published a report by Compass Lexicon, and it found that on the transmission level, that grid expansion can be accelerated by 5 to 8 years if you apply these innovative grid technologies in combination with building conventional grids. So I think that can buy us time in order to also develop new technologies. And I'd like to point to Elia and Maximilian. They're building an overhead power line called Panelists. It's about 6 gigawatts. It's in terms of getting permits for that, it's a struggle. What Professor Dirk van Herten has calculated is that just to land the offshore electricity, we need a Panelist, a 6 gigawatt overhead power line every 20 kilometers between Belgium and Kiel in northern Germany. We won't be allowed to build it, so we need cables that can move that kind of electricity. And then if we can apply innovative technologies that can extend the time before that kind of technology is available, and I know that Elia is looking into superconductors for some of the grounding of that cable. I think that's also something that should be encouraged. And the problem is that innovative grid technologies are available, but they are not being scaled, and that's something that could really make a huge difference in the short term.
Thank you. I think innovation is a nice one to stop at. Unfortunately, we still have many questions unanswered, so lots of discussion still to have. And thank you all for being here today. Thank you especially to our panelists for joining and the fantastic food for thought, and Gianluca for the great presentation of our tool. So thank you all for joining. Have a lovely day.